This was a long anticipated, I think, for me at least, interview. And I'm really, really glad that you took the time. I just said in the pre-chat that I'm currently sitting here with cold hands, so hopefully they warm up. Good news is that that my mouth works and yours. And thank you for making the time. 30-minute conversations about brands and human connections and what they have to do with each other and why they're important. And I just like to set the scene a little bit and then hand over to you, because my fun part is just asking questions and listening to your answers. So for those who are listening, how do we know each other? We actually know each other because we have children the same age. So we sometimes see each other at the gate. But then we also had a team workshop together, and that was really fascinating for me, actually joining your team last year for your strategy session. And it was really great to come in and do a little bit of Lego series play. And that that was one of the introductions. So I understood what you're up to, and hence the report when that came out, which you will obviously now talk about. That was really curious, and I was reading through it with many more ideas and questions. So without further ado, Bryony, please introduce yourself, say where you are, what you're doing at the moment, and just a little bit of background for those who are listening.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Bryony Simpson, founder of brand and creative consultancy WePioneer. I don't know if you meant right now. I'm sitting at home having that Friday working from home day. But as a business, we are growing fast, which is great, and talking about a topic that really fascinates us. Not even fascinates us. I think it's something which is deeply ingrained in who we are. I like to talk about us as an agency as a people business. Now, everyone says they're a people business, but the very modus operandi is the power of people. So the way we operate is slightly different than your average agency, which is that we bring together specialist teams handpicked from a portfolio of independent consultants, creatives, and strategists that we have that work around us. And we build those teams bespoke to each challenge. We have a core backbone, if you like, of client services that work with us. I have a team. But I've always been I've been in brands since the beginning of my career. And I've been agency side, I've been client side, and I was also a consultant in between. And I suppose the red thread that ran throughout my experience, and the reason why I built WePioneer today, is that one sort of distinct red thread is the sort of the knobbly nature of business problems, in the sense of they don't fit into a box. Like, every business challenge is unique, utterly unique. It seems like an obvious thing to say, and yet the industry, when it comes to marketing and creative services, is set up in stools. Like, you have your different, and now more so than ever, right? Because there's so many different sort of niche types of agencies, which is important. Don't get me wrong, everyone needs to have their specialist areas, but it's very difficult to navigate as a business and to know where to go, and to know, and nothing really fits into a box. And on the flip side, I've always worked on challenges when I've been client side, when I was even in agency side, and in between, of bringing together, just going, right, I need to crack this. So I'm going to work with so and so and so and so, and we're just going to bring them together, and we're just going to work through this. And it just always seemed like, yeah, duh, of course that's where you should.
Yeah.
And it sort of evolved over the years into me building an agency that operates in that way, so that we can remain really focused on what the challenges at the heart of our clients' issues, whilst also harnessing the really rich and diverse and fascinating community of independent thinkers and creatives that exist in the world today. Like, we all know that there are so many people who are leaving big business and leaving agencies and going there, carving their own path. We bring all those people together and give them a home. So that's us, and who we are and how we work. The kind of work we do is with we talk about experience-led businesses, and this sort of takes me on to the second piece of this, which is our passion around this important sort of linchpin in brand building, which is around human connection. So we work with businesses where the experience, if you like, is the point at which the value is really built into that brand. So what you buy as a consumer, or or a guest, for example, is the experience. So hospitality, we do a lot of work in hospitality. We do work in retail and e-commerce as well. And it also touches areas like professional services. It's a big part of that is, yes, people-led businesses. But something we really want to kind of bang the drum about is the fact that this sort of mentality, or this filter of brands, are built through deep and meaningful human relationships, human brand relationships, actually can apply to a lot of businesses. And the principles of how to think like that, what we take into the challenges with our clients and what we're talking about in our latest report.
Great. Perfect. And yes, on that, because thank you for that introduction. And I think I know a little bit more, but I love the way you explain it. And obviously that it's the connection and everything, which is around human connections. And obviously I have the advantage, I read the report. However, if you can just give, because you mentioned you bringing in people like specialists, and maybe there's some examples that you can just highlight from that report, and what type of project it is where you feel, it's needed to highlight it, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm going to wave a copy of the report.
This I never seen the hard copy. I only did the online version. Perfect.
There is an online version to sort of.
I put the link in here as well so that people can actually download it. So that's perfect. Hard copy.
Yeah, no, I love a piece of, I'm a brander at heart, and there's something very tactile. That in itself is quite important thing. There's something very human about the tactility of a report like this. But anyway, so yeah, it's a bit of the report is really a bit of a rallying cry for brands today, that we feel that in the fast changing world that we live in, that the relationship between brands and the humans that they're trying to build a relationship with, now it's worth saying that it's not always consumers, it might be your people internally, it could be other stakeholders as well. It's that the dynamic of the relationship is something fundamental to building a strong brand. I don't think that's anything particularly new, but it really feels at the moment that it's under strain. And on both sides, there's consumers are stressed. We're all quite stressed at the moment, for various reasons. Be it cost of living, through to a post-COVID world, through to the rapid advancement of AI, to navigating what's going to happen from an environmental perspective and social. There's so much going on that we're all aware of, that is heightening emotions. And on the brand side of things, they're undergoing these pressures as well. And yet the feeling is that this rather lethal combination of heightened emotions of the consumer side and brands trying to navigate all of these different pieces is meaning that kind of that laser sharp focus on, I'm trying to build a relationship with you, and vice versa, is getting muddied, and it's throwing itself up in different ways. Not all the time, but I think we're all sort of familiar with the examples of brands that are being cancelled, for example, on a big stage. But then it's also smaller stuff, like one example which I refer to a lot, which to me means a fairly strong relationship with the brand Pastor Evangelis, which is, if you don't know it, it's a recipe box brand super middle class, recipe box brand, freshly made pasta, really tasty, like none of the shop bought rubbish, like arrives in a box every week. And for us as a family, it's a treat on a Friday night. And it's very Italian. It's like very much sort of leans into that authentic Italian, sort of made by the nonna, you know,
Nice.
and there's a generosity behind the brand, they're a young brand, but they do a lot right. And they've done, which a lot of food brands have recently cut the size of their portions, which is a small thing today. The shrinkflation is a big issue, and a lot of consumers are getting up in arms about it. And it feels like a small thing, but for a brand that is built on warmth and generosity, and it's let's be honest, it's a fairly, you know, it's middle class. It's targeting people who've got a certain level of income. It's making decisions on the part of the consumer without consulting, and it's making missteps in terms of decisions on their behalf that actually detract away from what the meaning is that you've imbued in that brand. So for a brand that's full of generosity, in my view at least, and this is a pretty personal opinion, like, don't start cutting down your portion sizes, because it really detracts from the whole idea of generosity and why I love you, and you're an indulgence. And I'm gonna, you know, on a commercial level, I would like to think you're probably going to want to spend a little bit more with a brand like that than you would do with, you know, your pint of milk that you might go and buy from Tesco type thing. That I can kind of understand on that level. But with a sort of luxury brand like that, and it's the sort of the story or the lesson out of that we talk about, you know, some of these themes in the report is it's not just the moments of the experience that everybody thinks about, sort of that are frustrating, like, you know, call center people, you know, trying to get through to them. They're stressful for people, and you know, we know that's an issue, stuff like that. But the important thing with brands sort of in this moment, these sort of times of stress and pressure, making decisions on behalf of the consumer, if you like, is forgetting about the very principles of what goes into building a strong brand. It's really a depth of understanding about who you are, which a lot of brands do well, but going back to what am I all about? The other important part of it, which I don't know if we're that good at anymore, but we really need to go back to, is a depth of understanding of who we're building a relationship with. We overly rely on data to tell us a lot these days, and also just tell us nothing in the same way. There's this sort of obsession, well, not obsession, but we have so much data, but the real voice of the customer, the human being at the heart of it, is being lost. We don't sit down and have conversations with our people anymore. We don't ask them questions. And, you know, in situations like this, what I would have expected from that situation is an email, maybe, you know, that can be a mass email, which is going, we know it's tough right now for all of us. You know, we're suffering, you're suffering. We need to, you know, we need to save in some way. How would you rather us do that? We can nudge up the cost, or we can reduce the portion size. Having a conversation, like, there are ways to frame that conversation, and it's this sort of idea of human connection is it kind of falls into different areas, but a couple of them, which, as I say, come out in the report, which is really important, is that understanding you and really knowing the other person, and then you can start to sort of work on that relationship, and, you know, and then nurture it, and think about it at each stage, and constantly invest in it. But understanding the other person, as I say, ethnographic research, going back to qualitative research, sitting down and having and asking the difficult questions, and maintaining that, a positive example on, you know, also in the space of food, and also in the space of D2C, is Oddbox, which I also buy from. Really building a very middle class picture of myself, but you know, but really, really interesting brand. Again, very strong sense of identity, very strong story. If you don't know it, it's a vegetable box that comes every week, and they basically buy up all the odd shaped vegetables,
yeah,
and,
exactly. That's what.
and excess vegetables and fruit and vegetables. So from a sustainability perspective, brilliant. That, but to be honest with you, if they weren't able to deliver on a deep understanding of who their customer is and what they're looking for, and nurture that, they wouldn't keep their customers. They can have a great story, but at the end of the day, they've got to be able to deliver, and they've got to be able to invest in it. The example from them, in sort of contrast to the sort of portion size thing, was they were looking to change their delivery days.
Yeah.
That would affect me if it suddenly changed and they'd send an email going, we're changing your delivery day or whatever. They'd change the system. They're very, very good at asking questions. They don't email you and just go, how are you enjoying your experience? Can you give us 5 stars? Like a lot of brands do. It's like, be something. This was a very simple question. So we are thinking of shifting, I can't remember exactly what we said, but basically thinking of changing the way you manage your deliveries, and we're thinking of moving to this system. How would you feel about that? And it was a really short, literally it took me 30 seconds, series of questions, super easy on my phone, click through them. They asked my opinion. They didn't want anything in return. They just wanted to know, if we're going to do this, are we doing it in your best interests? And it was so simple, but I haven't stopped talking about it because it's the simple things like that. It's the overriding theme through the report is stuff, again, in a funny kind of note, we know this stuff. It's the basis of a human relationship. It's the basis of human couplings. Know yourself, really take the time to get to know the other person, invest in that relationship, constantly keep that in mind, and grow together. Like, it sounds very,
I know.
the principles aren't, then it's not rocket science.
And I can relate in a sense when I do my partnership projects, because that's where it is about, it's similar to, like you said, in a relationship, like listening, right? So it's not just about spreading a message, but really listen to the other person and asking the right questions, and not assuming that things are there, but really, get the feedback. And I guess it's nice because you also mentioned the data that we, obviously, because of the wonderful analytics tools that we have and all the things that come with tech, that we can easily just look at the data and make decisions based on that. I remember this, I guess, well-known example where you have, just in terms of user persona, 2 males, both born in the same year, both living in the castle, both having, I don't know, 2 children or something, and then you see the result, and one of them is King Charles and the other one is Ozzy Osbourne, right? So completely different, probably answers that you would get from them as a consumer about your product. And I think you're right. It's about the human connection. I guess it's about asking meaningful questions, and at least have, so that you as a consumer, and I always appreciate that as well, even though maybe I don't take the time to answer because I feel like I'm fine, but at least I was able to participate. It's about this collaboration aspect and being there as a stakeholder, and being able, even if I opt out of it, just have a chance to actually participate.
Have a voice. See, I think it's a fundamental human need there's 2 fundamental human needs in this, but there's one fundamental human need to feel heard, and to feel recognized for what I need. And it's connected very much down to sort of accountability. And when you think about customer experience, which really, obviously plays out particularly in service-led brands like hospitality and retail, but also, goes into professional services. If you're talking about, online banking or whatever, when you phone people up or what have you, it's accountability of someone listening and then taking responsibility for that issue, rather than it being your problem as the consumer. Some of the best brands, in my view, are those that lead with empathy. And that's a very difficult thing to get right. Empathy from a customer service perspective, when you've got someone at the end of the line who takes the step to put themselves in your shoes, which is an emotional drain for another person anyway, but it makes a huge difference to the level of sort of accountability that you can take for that person if you understand their whole problem or their whole question, and deal with it and on their behalf and solve that. But it's that thing of empathy is a principle that, again, it comes out in the report that we sort of say was like, it's not a value that as a company you can go, oh, we're going to be empathetic. We're a compassionate company. Like, that's a thing we're going to do. And we chose not to do that other thing because of it. It should be the way we just do business. And it should be the way it needs to be the way we build brands. And, in a time where there's an advent of AI and fast growth technology, where companies are trying to sort of grapple with, well, what do we do with this? Like, how do we inject AI into our business? We need to be doing this. It's coming. Like, I can't be seen to not be doing it. Oh, I've got some feedback. I don't know if you have as well. Sorry, feedback.
It's okay, yeah, that's technically. If we need to strengthen everything, yeah. I guess in that time, maybe I'm thinking, because it's also like the brand aspect, and I'm thinking brand managers, right? So what are the things that if it's a brand? Oh yeah, check if you need to. Can you hear me? Okay. You're back?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Now I can hear you better.
Perfect. Okay. So maybe then a question on that. If you think about brands or the brand manager, why do they struggle? Maybe there's a reason. Maybe obviously I know it's not black and white, but what are the reasons why a brand or brand manager maybe is struggling to getting it right? And what can they do? Is there something you can say, like, here's one advice or tip or just a little bit of a checklist that a brand manager or a brand could do if they are struggling for reason X? Maybe there's an example you have in mind. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's hard. Like, obviously it's hard, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about this. And it's sort of it's fundamentals that we all know. Like this, as I said at the beginning, there's nothing groundbreakingly new about this. It's more of a sort of come to Jesus talk about, let's not forget that this is what builds strong brands, and actually it's what we all need in the world. And the need for trust is a human need, and we need it in our relationships with other people as much as we need it with the relationships with our brands. We talk a lot in the report about the changing dynamic of the relationship that's shifted over the last 10 to 20 years that we're all aware of, but that the relationship is less fun. It's not a relationship of brand, what we say brand love anymore. It's a relationship of brand help. We've moved from a time of broadcast and omnipresence when it comes to marketing and communications to one of symbiosis, where through the work that you do as a brand, you're looking to nurture that relationship and that two-way conversation with the people that your consumers or whoever you're trying to attract. And that comes with a sort of burden of responsibility, if you like, as a brand, to be constantly thinking about, how can I add value to the lives of my customers or my potential customers? How can I add something to their lives, be it solve their problem, make sure that we've got the system set up to do that, or that piece of content that I'm going to be developing, how can I do it in a way that's actually going to enrich their lives in some way, big or small, and deepen the relationship that we might have? How can I, make that change in the business, in my delivery slots, in a way that actually adds value rather than ticks a box? And with the rapidly changing world that we're living in with technology and AI, and having said that, there is a propensity or a sort of danger to kind of go, right, we need a thing there, or we need a thing there, and we'll just shove it in and we'll make that happen. Or, the other sort of, one of the pressures that we're all aware of is, of cost pressures and commercial pressures that have particularly sort of come to a head in the last year, that you will try and save money by injecting tech into the process, for example.
Yeah.
And it's not to say, any of these things are necessarily bad by any stretch of the imagination. They're good and they're super valuable, can be super valuable, and they are progress. Like, we're not talking about going back to a time where, it was all just people and everyone's behind a sort of shop counter and it was lovely. Tech is brilliant for that, for solving and adding value to people's lives, if done in a way that's constantly through the filter of what does my consumer need, like what does my customer need, what does my people need, what does the other person in this relationship need from me right now, and how can I best do that? Oh, it might be actually I could really enhance this moment in our relationship through AI. I could really speed up this process by some really smart AI that I can inject into the stage of my app.
Yeah.
Or it might be one of the sort of negative examples that we're all quite familiar with is when times of trouble, retail banking brands, and a number of different brands as well, actually, on e-com brands as well, when you try and get hold of somebody to have a conversation with them, suddenly you get through to long waiting times, or you're sent off to checkout or FAQs, and it's this blocking thing. So I think, to go back to your question, like what can they do? I mean, it's this sort of, it may sound too lofty to say, but and again, this is nothing new. Like we constantly talk about this, but it's actually really, what do we mean by this? Always keeping the customer in focus, and it's not just about being, therefore we need to be constantly be a customer service focused brand. It's about, if you're a content marketer, for example, actually constantly thinking, how am I going to add value to the lives of whoever I'm in the relationship with?
Yeah.
And in doing that, like, what is the way that we do it? Like, what is our take on this? Because the mechanics of it, you kind of get into a relationship with someone. There's a transaction on your platform. For example, it's one transaction, and the process of that transaction is done in a way that's easy, that's smooth, and I feel good for it. And then it's followed up with the actual thing that arrives, and it's everything I expected to be. Oh, but actually no, I didn't get that part of what I ordered. So I call up, and so the constant, every step in that process, every channel that you use, is constantly thinking about what do they need in those moments, and you're applying that to everything you do, and every new thing that comes along, and every decision you make is going to keep the ship steady.
Nice. Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. It's and I guess that's a wonderful, if you are there as a, I guess, company project to help those brands do an assessment and then improve on those steps or identify those steps. That'll be, because sometimes it's easier to have someone from the outside looking at it than if you are there already for a long time and you just obviously have your tunnel view at some point. So maybe that's, I guess, another thing I can see a brand can actually benefit that. I have a few questions that I like to ask every of my interviewers, and I'm just want to check in terms of audio, because I just had also a noise thing from when you spoke. But we'll check that. Maybe, I don't know. But first question was, if you could choose someone to collaborate with, and maybe that's just a quick answer without much explanation, but because maybe there's someone that comes to your mind. If you have someone to collaborate with, who would that be? If you could pick from anyone in the world. Yeah, see, there's an audio thing. I don't know what it is. Sorry. I know, that's the thing. If you would have sit together in a coffee shop we wouldn't have tech issues.
No, exactly.
Much better.
That's better, because it's also now better again from my side. It's not one person, but I'd love to collaborate with a team psychologist.
Ah,
So something we're
mm,
looking to build in is really the psychology of teams as we
yeah,
build teams. So yeah, that's on my to-do list in the not too distant future.
nice, nice. That's a good one. I guess there are people out there, definitely. I can think of a few as well. And then last question, best advice you've been given? Is there something that pops to your head? Can also be a worst advice, like things you have been told and you're like, never do that again. Best or worst advice?
It's a popular one, but I'm not sure how many people actually end up doing it. Hire people better than you. And it's also one of those, like, what's your worst what's your weakness? Oh, I'm a perfectionist. I genuinely think that, and I think that's a principle that we like to bring into the business and the way we work, is really bringing the best heads into every brief.
Great.
Is yeah, that's where the good stuff happens.
Nice. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. I will definitely, well, I recommend people downloading the report, and I think maybe there's something else, and I will put it in the comments, and so that people can access it. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I like those examples as a consumer, but then also from collaboration projects, and I like brands who actually do it right. And thank you for pushing these things. So thanks for the conversation, Bryony, and yeah, looking forward to seeing you soon, and have a nice rest of the day. Thanks for listening, everyone, too.